Alright guys, so in today's video we're going to be going over some pretty interesting information about the PlayStation 5 and how it seems as though Sony put out a job listing recently where they actually mentioned the PS5 and they went as far as to call it the world's fastest console. Now, as far as I know, the job listing has since been updated because it made a lot of other people kind of like be like, whoa, is this Sony coming out here saying that this is the world's fastest console, like officially? And a lot of gaming news outlets were running with it and talking about it. And I'm a little late to it, but maybe that's a good thing because, again, they did update this. I don't think that you can find this anymore, but I still wanted to take some time to talk about it because a lot of people were asking me about it and mentioning it, and I've seen a lot of other people talking about it. I've seen a lot of Xbox fans immediately jumping all over it. And so, yeah, we're going to go over that briefly, but we're also going to take a little bit of time to once again talk more about Ghost of Tsushima because it seems as though Kotaku's Jason Schreier gave us some type of update on when exactly we can expect this game to drop. I feel like fans have been waiting for a long time now for any type of update on Ghost of Tsushima, anything of significance anyway, and Sony's just been completely tight-lipped about it, but we do have something worth maybe going over here. But starting off with this job listing, so it was recently discovered that Sony has a lot of job listings up for the PlayStation 5, and this is very normal. They're always hiring at times like this, and this was for the Senior Cloud Engineering Manager, and what the job listing actually said is you will be managing distributed systems that are powering 100 plus million PS4 consoles that deliver immersive gaming experiences. You will also be one of the leaders of an elite team that is super excited to launch the upcoming world's fastest console. Then it says PS5 in parentheses in 2020. You will love working at PlayStation if you have a strong passion for systems availability and resiliency. So this is quite interesting. It's even more interesting that Sony has removed this, but I can't help but notice a lot of Xbox fans immediately jumping on this, and you can just tell. And I'm not trying. I know that it's unavoidable, but I just have to be honest here. I'm not trying to incite some kind of fanboy flame war here. But you can certainly tell that there's a certain group of Xbox fans that are very much, they really feel as though they need the next Xbox to be the most powerful for some type of validation. I don't know why. I don't think it's that serious at the end of the day. I mean, it's kind of understandable that some Xbox fans feel this way because the idea that the power factor will be taken away from them, it's probably giving them some type of PTSD back towards the original Xbox One days, which is, again, totally understandable. I mean, Xbox completely messed that up, and the difference between, playing some games at 720p versus 1080p in the beginning of the generation, when being forced to buy a console with a camera bundled in, it was messed up. And so it's understandable that a lot of Xbox fans are feeling good that they had the Xbox One X and they don't want to see, come next generation, the PlayStation 5 be the more powerful console over Scarlet or the faster console. I mean, it's not, when we talk about Sony saying that it's the world's fastest console, does that translate to power? In a way, it kind of does. I mean, we have to understand that when it comes to these things, it's kind of the same thing, essentially. Whatever console is going to end up being able to be the faster console, being able to do more at once, usually ends up translating to being the more powerful console. Now, thinking about them removing this and retracting this statement, there's probably one of two reasons for this. The first reason I can think of is this is a true statement. Sony knows this. They are well aware that the PS5 is going to have a 5 to 10% advantage over Scarlet, but they didn't expect this to really kind of come out here and make waves all of a sudden, and they weren't trying to announce it yet. It's an announcement they want to save for a later date. Or the second, and I think honestly, if we're being honest here, probably the more likely reason is because they don't know. They're just saying this as a way to really prop up the PS5. They're very confident in it, as they should be. We're all confident in the next-gen consoles. It's all sounding really good. This is their way of enticing people to come work with them, and really just kind of brag about the PS5. But they didn't. You have to understand this is a job listing. They weren't expecting the media to necessarily cover this, and now that the media is covering it and running with it, and Xbox fans are getting, all in a tizzy over this, they're like, we need to retract the statement because chances are they probably don't know for sure. I'm just assuming anyway, whether or not the PS5 is going to be faster than Scarlet. Just like I'm sure Microsoft probably isn't 100% sure. It's going to be one of these things where they're both kind of just waiting to see who's going to reveal their hand first, and whatever happens, happens. But it's like I've always been saying, and I will continue to say this, even if this statement is true, even if the PS5 is the faster console, right, and Sony just retracted it because they didn't want it to be revealed yet, it won't matter. I've been saying this, and I will continue to say it over and over and over again, that at the end of the day, it is just going to come down to the games. And I think that this is where most PlayStation fans don't really feel threatened by the idea that Scarlet could be the more powerful or a faster console, because at the end of the day, the thing that's going to entice anybody to go out there and buy a Project Scarlet console is what games are going to be on offer. I mean, these consoles, the difference between them is going to be negligible. I will continue to say this until I'm proven wrong. If these consoles the specs are announced and we find out that Scarlet's 20 to 30% more powerful than the PS5, okay, then we'll have a conversation then. But I'm telling you that the difference between these consoles is probably going to be 10% or less. I'd even go as far as to say 5% or less. And so even if the PS5 doesn't end up being the more powerful or world's fastest console, it seems like these Xbox guys, frankly, they really can't have that happen. That's just going to be too much for them to handle. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, make fun of anybody here, but it's just, we've gotten to a point where we all kind of realize that Scarlet and PS5 are going to be awesome consoles, and we just want to play awesome games on them, and it's looking like Sony is certainly going to have some awesome games. But there is some hope for Microsoft, if I'm being honest here. It's looking hopeful. The Outer Worlds just launched, and while I'm personally not that interested in it, it's getting rave reviews, and it seems that Microsoft, there we go, they're showing that a studio they acquired with Obsidian has talent, and they are able to make games that really get people excited. So in the future, knowing that the Outer Worlds 2 or whatever Obsidian makes is not going to release on the PS5 or the Nintendo Switch or whatever their next console is, I think that that's going to make a lot of Xbox fans happy. That is something they should be happy about. But when it comes to the whole console power thing, I wouldn't look into this too much. If you're somebody who got really upset at the fact that this is Sony making a bold claim that, look, we are the fastest console, and that upset you as an Xbox fan, don't worry about it. It's really not that big of a deal. Whether it's true or not, it's going to be irrelevant at the end of the day. And if you're somebody who, is banking on the idea of power, well, maybe don't. Maybe just realize that it's not that serious. Anyway, I spent too much time on that topic. To finish out this video, we are going to talk about Ghost of Tsushima, excuse me, and how apparently, according to Kotaku's Jason Schreier, it's going to be launching in late 2020. Now, I'm mentioning this because fans are eagerly awaiting anything new on Ghost of Tsushima, and Sony just isn't talking about it, but this is the best we have to go by. Yesterday, it was announced that The Last of Us Part 2 is being delayed into May of 2020 and being pushed back from its February release date, and so naturally a lot of questions cropped up about Ghost of Tsushima. What does this mean for that game? And Jason Schreier did have something to say about it on his personal Twitter account. He said, by the way, Ghost of Tsushima doesn't have a public release date yet, but it'll also be bumped later into 2020 to account for this delay. Don't expect them to suddenly turn it into a PS5 game or anything, but it was originally planned for the first half of the year, not anymore. So this is actually very interesting because if what he's saying is to be believed, he's saying that Sony was actually going to release, apparently, Ghost of Tsushima not too long after The Last of Us Part 2, and it seems like that may still end up happening, except things are just being pushed back here. If The Last of Us Part 2 did still release in February, maybe that means that Ghost of Tsushima would have launched maybe in June or July. I think that would have made sense. That would have been okay. And I think that would have been super unexpected as well, and it really would have surprised people. But now we know The Last of Us 2 is coming out in May, and so that makes me think that Ghost of Tsushima is going to be coming out closer to the launch of the PS5, As to whether or not it ends up launching alongside the PS5, I don't think that's likely. Him emphasizing here that this doesn't mean it's going to be a PS5 game. That doesn't mean they're not going to probably market it alongside the PS5. Of course they will, letting people know that there's enhancements for it and whatnot. But you also have to think, what about the PS5's launch lineup? If they're going to have a Demon's Souls remake by Bluepoint Games, and then we're most likely expecting another Gran Turismo game, that's perfectly fine. That adds diversity to the launch lineup, but it also ensures that there's not going to be a ton of crossover there, because they're two very different games for two very different audiences to entice different groups of gamers to upgrade to the PS5. If you throw Ghost of Tsushima in the mix, launching very, very close to the PS5 or even alongside it, that could potentially create some problems where there could be some crossover between a potential Demon's Souls remake and Ghost of Tsushima. So I could see it maybe releasing sometime in August, or I think September would be an ideal time for a game like Ghost of Tsushima. It's not too close to the launch of the PS5. It's far enough away where it can have its own breathing room, and they can especially talk it up because it's like, oh, yes, it's releasing on PS4, the last big PS4 game that launches before the PS5, but it will have some major PS5 enhancements. I could see that going really well for them, and they don't have to worry about there being too much crossover between a game like Ghost of Tsushima. And again, this is all assuming that Sony isn't planning on basically having Ghost of Tsushima as a launch title for the PS5, because I just don't see that happening. But, I could be completely wrong on that. But either way, this is some good news in my opinion, because it's just nice to hear more about Ghost of Tsushima, even if it's not directly coming from Sony. I think anybody who heard this news about The Last of Us 2, it was kind of just assumed that, well, okay, if you had any hope of Ghost of Tsushima launching in the first half of 2020, it's not going to happen now. It's going to be the last half of 2020. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I wanted to take some time to talk about both of these things. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think about Sony and this job listing, claiming it's the world's fastest console, but then retracting it? What do you think it means? Do you think it means anything that significant, or do you think that they were just really trying to prop up the PS5 itself to entice people to come work for them? And what do you think about Jason Schreier talking about Ghost of Tsushima launching late in 2020? I want you to let me know what month in 2020 you think Ghost of Tsushima is going to drop. Going to be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Be sure to leave the video a like if you enjoyed it and you found it informative. It really helps it out. Lets me know you guys enjoy the content. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload. And feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.